I created a travel software that boosted our Bankrupt company to $400 million in profit in a year. But suddenly, on my sister's birthday, my dad gifted her the entire business. When I confronted him, he laughed at me and handed me $100, saying, "This is your actual value." I quietly left, but the next morning, when they arrived at work. I'm Ava Mitchell, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes family can be your worst enemy, especially in business. For 10 years, I poured my heart and soul into our small family-run tech company, transforming it from a struggling start up into a $50 million enterprise. But success has a way of exposing the ugliest sides of people, even the ones who are supposed to stand by you. I remember when it all began, back when our family business was just a tiny computer repair shop in a strip mall, barely making enough to get by. My dad had started it 20 years ago, and despite its struggles, it was his pride and joy. My sister Lauren was always the golden child. Straight A's, elite business school, dad's favorite. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one. The one who stayed behind to help him while pursuing a computer science degree at a local college. "Ava, you're wasting your potential here," Lauren would say during her visits home from school. "You should aim higher." But I saw something in that little shop that no one else did: potential. While Lauren was off studying theoretical business models, I was learning how the real world worked. I was coding, fixing systems, spotting gaps in the market that no one else was paying attention to. During my final year of college, I developed our first proprietary software, a simple but effective inventory management tool for small businesses. It wasn't groundbreaking, but it was affordable, user-friendly, and met a real need. At first, Dad was skeptical, but when local businesses started buying licenses, his tune changed. "Maybe you're onto something here, kiddo," he said, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of pride in his eyes. That moment meant everything to me. If only I had known how temporary it would be. Under my leadership, the business began to grow. I worked 14-hour days, 7 days a week, pouring everything I had into our success. While Lauren was climbing the corporate ladder at a top consulting firm in New York, I was building something real. Our tiny repair shop evolved into a full-fledged software development company, expanding from local clients to national corporations. Mom watched me with quiet concern. "Don't work yourself into the ground, Ava," she'd say, bringing me dinner at the office. "You need a life outside of this." But I couldn't stop. Maybe part of me was still chasing validation. Maybe I just wanted to prove that I could make something of my own. 5 years into our transformation, we hit our $1 million in annual revenue. That's when Lauren suddenly took an interest in the family business again. She quit her high-profile job and moved back home. At a family dinner, she made her grand announcement. "I think it's time I took my rightful place in the company," she said, flashing her trademark confidence. "With my business expertise, we could really take things to the next level." Dad practically lit up. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. We could use your professional touch around here." I sat there, my fork suspended midair, trying to process what was happening. The company I had built from nothing was now being handed to Lauren like some kind of inheritance. I swallowed my objections and played along. Lauren was appointed as CEO, despite having zero experience in our industry. Dad insisted it was good for our company's image to have someone with her credentials at the helm. So while I continued handling product development and operations, she took over marketing and investor relations. For the next 5 years, our business flourished, but so did the tension. I kept developing new software, building relationships, and improving our services. Meanwhile, Lauren crafted an image for herself as the face of the company. She gave interviews about being a woman in tech, accepted awards for entrepreneurship, and took credit for innovations she had nothing to do with. Our revenues skyrocketed to $50 million, but so did the power struggle. Lauren began excluding me from key meetings, making decisions without consulting me, slowly, methodically, pushing me to the sidelines of my own creation. Then came Dad's birthday party, the night that changed everything. The party, of course, was Lauren's idea. She had rented out the grand ballroom at the city's most expensive hotel and invited all our business associates. It wasn't really a birthday party, it was a networking event disguised as one. But that was Lauren's style. Everything had to serve a purpose. I arrived early to help with preparations, wearing a simple black dress. The moment Lauren spotted me, she gave me that disapproving look I had grown used to over the years. "Couldn't you have made more of an effort?" she hissed. "These are important people, Ava." I ignored her and focused on greeting guests. The room quickly filled with business executives, investors, and family friends. Lauren worked the room like a politician, shaking hands and flashing her perfectly rehearsed smile. I, as usual, stayed in the background, making sure everything ran smoothly. Dinner was served, and just as I was starting to relax, Lauren clanked her glass for attention. I expected a typical speech, a tribute to Dad, Maybe some nostalgic childhood memories? Instead, she dropped a bomb that shattered everything. As we celebrate Dad's 60th birthday, she began, her voice confident and commanding. I think it's time to announce some changes at Mitchell Tech. My stomach twisted. Changes? The board has agreed that the company needs unified leadership to move forward, she continued, her words slicing through the room like a blade. Board meetings? What board meetings? For too long, we've been held back by outdated thinking and resistance to change, Lauren went on, her eyes locking onto mine. That's why, effective immediately, I will be taking over as sole CEO. It's time for certain elements that no longer serve our growth to step aside. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I sat there, frozen, as Lauren carried out her corporate execution in front of our entire network. Some people, she added, her voice dripping with false sympathy, are better suited for technical roles rather than leadership. She was talking about me, humiliating me. My sister Ava has done an adequate job maintaining our legacy systems, but in today's fast-moving industry, we need vision. We need excellence. And frankly, Ava, you're just not cut out for this level of business. I turned to Dad. Say something. Stand up for me. But he just nodded along, a proud smile on his face. Mom, on the other hand, kept her eyes down, her hands trembling slightly on the table. Lauren wasn't done. The truth is, she said, her voice rising for dramatic effect. Ava, you are worthless in today's business world. Your outdated ideas and lack of formal business education have become the liability. It's time for you to step aside gracefully. The silence in the room was suffocating. Hundreds of eyes were on me, waiting for my response. I could feel the pity, the judgment, the unspoken agreement with Lauren's words. Everything I had built, every late night, every sacrifice, it was all being away in front of everyone. Slowly I stood. My chair scraped against the floor, the sound slicing through the hush like a gunshot. Everyone expected a scene, maybe tears, a screaming match. Instead, I simply picked up my purse, walked over to Dad's table, and placed a small wrapped package in front of him. Happy birthday, Dad, I said quietly. Then I turned and walked out. Head held high, leaving behind the whispers, the stares, and the sister who thought she had won. That night, I sat in my home office, surrounded by awards and patents that bore my name. Lauren believed she had taken everything from me, but she had forgotten one crucial detail, something that would turn her moment of triumph into the biggest mistake of her life. As I powered up my laptop and began typing, a small smile played on my lips. Tomorrow would be interesting. After all, there's more than one way to run a successful business. And in 10 years, I had learned far more than Lauren had in all her fancy business classes. The next morning, the sun rose bright and clear, and with it, everything was about to change. I arrived at the office early, before anyone else, and waited. At precisely 9 a.m., Lauren strode through the front doors with Dad beside her, both wearing triumphant smiles, smiles that were about to be wiped off their faces. Ava, Lauren's voice held a mix of surprise and annoyance. What are you doing here? I thought after last night you'd have the dignity to stay home. I smiled, remembering the email I had sent at 3 a.m. to every major client, partner, and employee of Mitchell Tech. Just wrapping up some loose ends, sister dear. But since you're here, we should probably talk about the company's future. There's nothing to discuss, Dad interjected, his voice firm. Lauren's in charge now. The board has already approved it. Ah yes, the board, I said, pulling out my tablet. Let's talk about that. I tapped the screen, and the conference room's main monitor lit up with a document. You see, while Lauren was busy planning parties and giving interviews, I was actually building this company, and there are a few things you both seem to have forgotten. I pulled up another document, zooming in for emphasis. First, let me remind you that I own 51% of Mitchell Tech shares. When we incorporated 10 years ago, Dad gave Lauren and me equal shares, 25% each, while keeping 50% for himself. But 3 years ago, when we needed capital for expansion, Dad sold me 6% of his shares. Remember that day, Dad? You were too busy attending Lauren's award ceremony to handle the negotiations yourself, so you signed the papers without reading them carefully. The color drained from both their faces. Lauren's perfectly manicured hands gripped the conference table. That's impossible, she whispered. Dad would never. But he did, I interrupted, pulling up another document. And that's not all. I clicked again, and another screen filled with legal filings. The core software that generates 80% of our revenue? It's not owned by Mitchell Tech. It's owned by my separate company, Innovate Solutions LLC. Mitchell Tech only has a licensing agreement, which expires in, I checked my watch about 10 minutes ago. Dad collapsed into a chair, realization dawning on his face. The renewal papers, he murmured. The ones you asked me to sign last week, the ones I didn't read because you were too busy helping Lauren plan the party. I finished for him. Yes, those papers. I decided not to submit them. Lauren's face twisted in rage. You underhanded little. Careful, sister. I cut her off smoothly. You might want to hear the rest before you finish that sentence. I clicked again and a flood of emails appeared on the screen. While you were busy announcing my graceful exit last night, I was sending emails to our clients. You see, most of our major clients have personal loyalty clauses in their contracts. They signed with Mitchell Tech because of me, my expertise, my track record. Last night I informed them of the leadership changes and my departure. I zoomed in, showing dozens of responses from our biggest accounts. Would you like to know how many have already triggered their contract termination clauses? I tilted my head. Or how many of our top developers, who by the way, are actually employed by Innovate Solutions, not Mitchell Tech, have already accepted positions at my new venture? Silence. Through the glass walls we could see employees gathering, whispers spreading as they check their emails. Lauren frantically pulled out her phone, her perfect composure cracking as she scrolled. You can't do this, she stammered. You mean I can't take back what's mine? I said calmly. You thought you could just take over because you have an MBA and Dad's approval? You thought you could humiliate me in front of everyone and get away with it? I stood, smoothing my dress. So here are your options. I let the weight of my words settle before continuing. Option 1. I walk away with my shares, my software, my clients, and my employees. Mitchell Tech becomes an empty shell. And you can explain to all those important people you invited last night why the company's value just dropped to 0 overnight. Dad's face aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes. And option 2, he asked weakly. Option 2, you both resign? I took a deep breath and met their stunned expressions with a calm, unwavering gaze. I take full control of Mitchell Tech, I continued. You both keep your shares as silent partners, receiving dividends, but having no say in operations. Lauren gets a nice severance package and glowing references for her next job, somewhere far away from here. Lauren's face turned an interesting shade of red. You planned this all along, didn't you? You were just waiting for the right moment to stab us in the back. I let out a short laugh, devoid of humor. No, Lauren. I spent 10 years trying to be a good daughter, a good sister, and the entire time you both took me for granted. I built this company from nothing while you collected accolades for my work. I only planned this. I checked my watch again about 12 hours ago. After you called me worthless in front of everyone we know, my phone buzzed. Another client termination notice. Time's running out. What's it going to be? The next hour was a blur of paperwork and lawyers. By noon, I sat alone in what was now my office, looking out over the city. The company I had built was now truly mine, but the victory felt hollow. Family relationships lay in ruins around me, trust shattered like dropped crystal. That evening Mom came to see me. Her eyes were red from crying. Did it have to end this way? She asked softly. I met her gaze, my voice gentle but firm. They gave me no choice. They would have taken everything I built and discarded me without a second thought. She nodded slowly, understanding but sad. What happens now? I turned my laptop toward her, showing her the plans I had already drawn up. Expansions, new product lines, innovations I had been holding back. Nows. I exhaled, feeling lighter than I had in years. Now I build something even bigger. But this time, I do it without carrying people who see me as worthless. 1 year later. Under my sole leadership, Mitchell Tech tripled in value. Lauren found a job with a startup in Silicon Valley, humbled, but hopefully wiser. Dad retired, finally understanding that his golden child had nearly destroyed his legacy. We see each other at holidays maintaining a polite distance, masking wounds that may never fully heal. Sometimes, late at night, I look at old family photos and feel a twinge of sadness for what we lost. But then, I remember that night at the birthday party, the look of disdain on Lauren's face, the way Dad nodded along with her cruel words, and I remind myself, in business and in family, respect is earned, not given. They learned that lesson too late. My stories spread through business circles, a cautionary tale about underestimating the wrong person. At industry events, I often catch whispers. That's Ava Mitchell, the one who they never finish the sentence. They don't have to. My success speaks for itself. Last week, I received an invitation to speak at Lauren's Business School's graduation ceremony. The topic? Hidden strengths, the power of underestimated leaders. I accepted the invitation with a small smile, already planning my speech. After all, I have quite a story to tell. The company continues to thrive under my leadership, but more importantly, I found peace with my decisions. Sometimes the strongest message you can send is simply proving people wrong, and sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying others. It's about rising so high that they can't help but see their own mistakes. As I sit here in my office overlooking the city, I remember something my mother once told me. Success is the best revenge. But wisdom is knowing when to stop seeking revenge and start seeking growth. She was right. I've moved past revenge. These days I focus on building something meaningful, something that will outlast the petty jealousies and family drama. I still keep that wrapped birthday present I never gave Dad. A photo album of the company's journey, from that tiny repair shop to what it is today. Maybe someday, when the wounds have healed enough, I'll finally give it to him. Until then, it sits on my shelf. A quiet reminder that our greatest strengths often come from the very things others underestimate about us.